Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Games Like Zelda. This episode, I'm sure a lot of you knew was coming. I went to a video game store to pick up this one handheld Zelda game. I think it was probably Phantom Hourglass or something, and the guy was like, "Hey, have you heard of this game? It's a lot like Zelda." And I was like, looking at the cover, thinking, how could this be anything like Zelda? It just didn't look anything like a Zelda game to me. I looked at a couple screenshots of it, and I thought, whatever, these people are crazy. This can't be anything like Zelda. But then I watched a few gameplay trailers, and I thought, maybe it could kind of be sort of Zelda-like, so let's give it a shot. And I played it, and it was amazing. It's this game, Okami. Now, what's weird about Okami is that you look at it at first, and like I was saying, it doesn't seem even slightly Zelda-like. It's a wolf, and it's all Japanese. It takes place in Japan, and it's got a Japanese art style, like Japanese ink paintings. But what's really extremely Zelda-like about it is how it's designed, how it's constructed. I mean, the controls feel very Zelda-like. The very fact that it's got this overworld that you go through, and then there are various dungeons that you go into, and they have treasure chests, different types of items and weapons that you get, which are usually used for that dungeon boss. I really feel like if you took the graphics out of it and replaced it with Twilight Princess's Link Wolf thing and Twilight Princess's style, it would be a Zelda game. If you'd probably have to change some character names and such too. I mean, I have pretty specific tastes in video games, and I wasn't really so interested in what this looked like. It looked extremely Japanese, and I prefer a more European fantasy art style, like we have in Zelda or the older Final Fantasy games, Secret of Mana, that kind of thing. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but not really that long, actually. I feel like nearly as soon as I actually started controlling the character, I was taken back by how beautiful the art style was. And it's no surprise that it turned out that this game, a lot of people consider it a Zelda clone, because it isn't really a Zelda clone, but it does have a lot of gameplay similarities to a Zelda game. And this isn't surprising because the developers themselves have said, yeah, we're fans of Zelda, we were trying to create something a little bit Zelda-like. That you're playing the part of this god who has been resurrected, reborn, and you don't have all of your powers yet. So the way you attack is you've got these sword-type items that you sort of magically attack with. It feels exactly like a Zelda game. You hit a button and it swings a sword. It's just you happen to be a wolf. And the sword is just kind of swinging independently of that. You get other types of weapons, like a whip sort of thing of beads, and this disc thing that attacks a lot of enemies. But where the game really shines is if you've played any of the DS Zelda games that have required you to draw with the stylus to solve puzzles and things, this is very similar to that, because what it uses is this thing called the Celestial Paintbrush. And with this, you basically freeze time, and then you draw over the screen, and this lets you do a lot of things. It lets you solve puzzles by filling in the gaps and then recreating a bridge. It lets you slice through enemies. It lets you make trees bloom and blossom. It lets you change night into day by drawing a sun up in the sky. It lets you create bombs. Speaking of bombs, how Zelda is that? There are so many instances in this game where you see a little crack in the wall, you draw a little bomb, it blows up the crack, you find a secret treasure chest. It's a Zelda game, practically. Also, just like a Zelda game, you have a slightly annoying helper who tags along with you throughout the whole game, who sort of gives you hints and tips and secrets about what you're supposed to be doing next. And just the vibe in general. The townspeople feel very, very much like Zelda townspeople, how they're kind of slightly goofy, not so serious, and they've all got all kinds of side quests for you to do for them. And of course, the biggest difference between this and a Zelda game is that this is very Japanese-based. It takes place in Japan. It's based on Japanese myths and legends. In fact, the character that you play is the Japanese sun goddess. The story in this game is amazing. You get to a point where you feel like it's about to climax in, and that's going to be the finish, and then it turns out that was just the first half of the game. Also, this past year, it had a sequel come out for the DS, and the sequel, I think, plays even more like a Zelda game than this one does, if that's even possible. So if you haven't given Okami a shot yet, you really should. It's, besides being so extremely Zelda-like, it's just a great game in general. Now, it was originally released for the PlayStation 2, so those of us who are kind of Nintendo-centric had to wait a little bit, but then yes, it was eventually released for the Wii. I have not played the Wii version. I actually do have a PlayStation 2, and I played it on that, so I can't really comment on how the Wii version, the controls are. I've heard differing stories. I've heard people say that drawing with the Wii remote was extremely natural feeling. Other people didn't feel that way, so you'll have to decide for yourself on that. But I can attest to the fact that on the PlayStation 2 it's great, and the DS sequel is just as amazing. So that's been Games Like Zelda for this week. Next week, well, if you thought Okami was a Zelda clone, wait until we talk about the game next week. See you guys!